This video is about hiking in areas where there are no trails. Trails, of course, can be great. They take you to beautiful places, very interesting locales, and you can see all kinds of really fascinating things on trails. However, there's one problem with trails. There are other people there. People may not be on the trail when you're there, but obviously someone has been there before. The advantage of going to places where there are no trails is that you have the chance of finding something that's truly unique, something that hasn't been discovered before. When you're hiking without trails, there are some variables that you need to consider that are especially important. For instance, your own personal physical condition, the distance you plan to travel, the kind of elevation that you're going to encounter, obstacles that you may encounter, such as heavy brush that you have to get through, the climate, whether it's going to be hot, cold, possibility of rain, how remote is the area, the equipment that you have, the kind of experience that you have, and also the skills that you possess. Here's an example of some of the equipment that you should have with you when you're going off trail. It's especially important to have a partner with you in case you run into trouble. Having walkie-talkies is important for a couple of reasons. One is sometimes you and your partner will split up, and if one of you get in trouble, you need to be able to communicate. Cell phones, of course, are good, but remember, of course, they don't cover in all areas. Having a GPS, handheld GPS, is important. Also having a topo map. Having some images from Google Earth can be extremely important. A map from Google Earth. Machete, that would be important if you're going to go through any heavy brush. And it's a really good idea to have some extra first aid and emergency equipment, including first aid training. If you're on a trail and something goes wrong, you're likely to get some help, at least eventually. But if you're off trail, you better have some backup stuff, like extra batteries, having a paper topo map in case your GPS system gets broken like mine did on my last trip, having a compass, and mark critical return points, because without a trail you need some sort of markers in order to get back sometimes. Before you start an off-trail hike, it's very important you do some research first, both on the path you're going to take and on the destination. For example, in the video that follows, I did some research on Google Earth first and was able to find a very small break in the very intense brush that bordered this one area. And it was about the only place that we could get through in order to get to our final destination. Another thing to do is leave a trusted person a map of where you're going to be and also a time that you're going to call in and report whether or not you're okay or not. And then finally, sometimes you want to push your limits on these hikes, but it's important to leave some margin of safety because you do, after all, want to get back safely at the end of the day.
Well, today the research team of Phil and Tyler, Cody, and myself, we're near New Maloney's Lake, and you're looking right now at the top of Table Mountain, a portion of Table Mountain, and we're going to be heading down towards where the lake used to be. It's dried up, at least in part now, because of the drought. And we're going to be looking for the site of an old Miwok village. And this is the direction that we're going to be going, down through these trees. There are no trails in this area, so we're going to have to bushwhack our way through the trees and the brush and the poison oak. Fortunately, I was able to use Google Earth earlier and find a place where there was relatively little brush in comparison to some of the other areas anyhow, which were almost impenetrable because of the very, very thick brush. But hopefully we can find a path through here and get down to the area where we want to do our searching. You can hear Cody panting in the background, I think, but here's a nice view of that rock wall that we found. And it probably wasn't constructed for ranching purposes. At least there's one piece of evidence that suggests it was probably related to a mine, and that's this piece of metal right down here, this piece of sheet metal. Of course, it's not conclusive proof, but typically if it's purely ranching in nature, you're not going to have this metal.
This is an interesting plant that we found along the way. This is a California manroot. It's called a manroot because of the very large and long tuber that forms this plant. In fact, the tuber was crushed by some Native Americans and then thrown into the water to kill fish.
Well, we finally got through the dense underbrush and poison oak that was on the upper part of this hill, and now we're going to swing around and you can see this big open area, and this is the area that we suspect at one time there was an Indian village, a Miwok village. Normally this area would have been underwater if New Melones was at its normal height, but right now New Melones is nowhere in sight. It's off in the distance. So this gives us an opportunity of doing some research, some exploration, see if we can find evidence of that village. There's a nice view of Table Mountain, and in the grass in the foreground there, you might be able to see Phil and Tyler making their way down that little hill, getting down into this flat area where there's a little stream that's trickling through the meadow, and there's some good rocks here. So there's the possibility of finding some evidence of the Miwok village here on these rocks in the form of bedrock mortars. Let me zero in a little bit on Table Mountain. One of the things that's a good indication of a stream or a little spring is the plants that grow in the area. And as an example, let me just zero in here, and you can see those tall bushes right there. That's an indication that there's a water source at that point, either a stream or a spring. Well, we found our first bedrock mortar of the day. Phil's got a little metal cup that he's using to bail it out. There was some rain just yesterday, and so the mortar is filled with water. But now, as the water's been removed, you can see it even more clearly. Definitely a bedrock mortar.
There's a second one right,
And
second one right there.
you can come around, and yes, you can see that area where there's a little bit of water. Yeah, Phil's got his hand around it right now. It's a very shallow mortar, but it definitely was the start of a bedrock mortar right there. Okay, this is the bedrock mortar that I found near the other one, and I've cleared away the debris and brush, and you can see very clearly that in fact it is a bedrock mortar. It has all the characteristics. Nice round shape, very smooth round bottom. Up ahead there's a beautiful piece of bedrock, and it's nice and flat. So I think that's a prime location to look for some more mortars. There it is, right there. So Cody and I are going to head over there and see what we can find. All right, now we're closer to the rock. And as I'm sure you can see, there are two very nicely distinct bedrock mortars that have filled up with a little bit of water. And so it's very easy to see them. So here's two more. And let me just pan back here over to the side. And you can see that we're right next to a small stream channel. So this would have been an ideal place for mortars because of the rock, nice and flat, and next to a stream. Well, our adventure is over for today, or at least most of it is. We still got to get back to the car. And this is an example of hiking without any kind of a trail. Although this looks sort of like a trail, in fact, it's the bottom of a creek bed. And now we're using this to find our way out.